Okay, so the Georgia heartbeat bill passed, and everybody has their panties in a twist. Everybody's upset. If you read the news, it is like the abortion apocalypse is upon us. You know, no woman in the state of Georgia can now obtain an abortion. It's horrible. Women's health is endangered. One article was calling it forced pregnancy. I wish I'd saved the article because I thought it was hilarious. Because women are they're being forced to be pregnant. It's just so horrible. I had to read this thing. I've got it up right here. I've got copied and pasted a bunch of the juicier parts of it. I wanted to talk about it a bit because the way the news spins it, it really does sound like you cannot obtain an abortion in the state of Georgia. I don't think that's true. So let's look at it. Exemptions. Right away, let's just start with the fun part. Exemptions are: a physician determines in reasonable medical judgment that a medical emergency exists. Medical emergency, by their own definition, means a condition in which an abortion is necessary to prevent the death or the death of the pregnant woman, or the substantial and irreversible physical impairment of a major bodily function of the pregnant woman, so reproductive capacity, or other things, whatever those other things might be. It's pretty open-ended. If there is some sort of medical problem that will cause a woman to go through significant bodily impairment, a physician can give her an abortion. So if you need an abortion in the state of Georgia, for those reasons, you can get an abortion in the state of Georgia. There is one little thing I noticed. No such greater risk shall be deemed to exist if it is based on a diagnosis or claim of mental or emotional condition of the pregnant woman, or that the pregnant woman will purposely engage in conduct which she intends to result in her death or in substantial and irreversible physical impairment, or a major bodily function. So cases where a woman is suicidal and seeks out an abortion will not be counted under that rule. It might be a medical emergency for the woman because she's suicidal. It is not going to be an exemption. And I don't know, I have mixed feelings on that one. I'm still trying to find really, really good examples of cases where women were mentally ill and needed an abortion. And I don't know how empathetic I am on that one. And so I really struggle with it. I struggle to wrap my head around it. Personally, for me, that's just a hard one to really get into focus. One of the arguments that I have seen many pro-lifers make against abortion for the health and well-being and life of the mother is that there are women who can simply go into an abortion clinic and claim to be suicidal in order to obtain an abortion that they would not otherwise have access to. Oh, my battery's going out on me. Of course it is. Excuse me for a second. Okay. I think that worked. So anyway, the argument has been, well, we can't have any exemptions for the health and well-being of the mother, because how often does that actually happen anyway? And also, women will use it to get abortions that they would not otherwise be entitled to. Basically, we can't have, it's the gun argument. We can't have something written into the law to allow people to do it, even if it's very necessary, because people will, bad guys will take advantage of it to kill people, like literally. This rules that out. So on the one hand, nobody's going to be complaining that, that women can go sneaking into an abortion clinic and claim that they're mentally unwell and get an abortion they shouldn't have in the state of Georgia. But I don't know how bad of a situation a suicidal woman is in when she is pregnant and suicidal. I mean, some women do commit suicide. It's too blurry for me. I can't see it clearly, so I don't know. Other exemptions. If the probable gestational age of the unborn child is 20 weeks or less, and the pregnancy is the result of rape or incest, in which an official police report has been filed alleging the offense of rape or incest. You can have an abortion in the state of Georgia if you've been raped. Cool. Cool. A police report has to be filed. It has to be documented that you were raped in the state of, well, not in the state of Georgia, you could have been raped anywhere, but the rape itself has to be documented, or the incest. Yeah, I mean, I do have a few questions about that. On the one hand, it incentivizes women who are raped to report the crimes that were committed against them. I didn't report mine because I went deep into denial and pretended it never happened. So, but for women to whom it does happen, they can file a police report and attempt to put their life back together, which is really awesome. I do find myself wondering just a little bit how many women are going to file false rape claims in order to obtain abortions in the state of Georgia. That will be an interesting thing to see. I have a very poor opinion of humanity in general, so I'm sure it's going to happen at least once, and I feel really, really sorry for whatever guy gets pinned with a false rape claim just because some girl wanted an abortion. It's probably going to happen at least once because that's how people are. Other exemptions. Oh, and do I think that the law should somehow be struck down on the basis that some woman might falsely accuse some man of rape just so that she can get out of trouble for herself? No, people are just monsters. That's all. People are monsters. Okay. If a physician determines in reasonable medical judgment that a pregnancy is medically futile, by their definition, medically futile means that in reasonable medical judgment, an unborn child has a profound and irremediable congenital or chromosomal anomaly that is incompatible with sustaining life after birth. Good. Good. You can get an abortion in cases like mine. You can get an abortion in pretty much any severe medical case that I can think of. Good. This also takes care of the twin situation. You don't have to have it in the rules that you are having an abortion to save the life of one twin if the other twin is dying. So that's covered as well. It's all covered. It looks like it covers everything. You know, from my poorly educated layman's, from what I can tell, that's what it looks like. And so that makes me happy. You can obtain an abortion if you need an abortion in Georgia, under these very extreme circumstances that occasionally do pop up. I believe that's all the exemptions. Yeah, but those are the important ones. Those are the ones I keep looking at and saying, well, people really should have access to abortions in these cases. I haven't really talked about cases of rape and incest very much, but I almost feel like I shouldn't have to. Like, if you don't get it, you're probably never going to get it, but that doesn't mean that everybody else doesn't get it. These are extreme cases, and they seem to have covered all the really extreme cases. So that makes me very happy. If I had thought that they were so draconian as to not allow abortion in some of these extreme cases, I would have called them out on it. I would have been like, this is a horrible bill. This is awful because of, these extreme cases. Texas, the law that got struck down in Texas, which I can't remember the name of, one of the reasons I think it got struck down was because of people like Valerie Peterson, who lived in Texas, developed I'm going to use Georgia's term for it, a medically futile pregnancy, tried to obtain an abortion, and was unable to obtain an abortion in the state of Texas and had to go all the way to Florida in order to obtain an abortion for her medically futile pregnancy. It was a very extreme case. Her baby had alobar haloprosencephaly. It is not a pretty disease, and it will kill your baby. You will never meet, at least not with medical technology being the way it is, you will never meet a person, like a grown adult, or even a child with alobar haloprosencephaly. I think the oldest I've ever seen anyone live with it has been a year, and that was one of the miracle babies. It was very medically futile, and the fact that she had to travel so far in order to obtain services for that, like medical service for that, was just insane. So the law in Texas got struck down. I'm sure it got struck down for a lot of other reasons, but that was the part that stuck with me. It's like, because that it was very reminiscent of my own situation. Let's see. In conducting an abortion, if the child is capable of sustained life, medical aid then available shall be rendered. They had a clause like that in my own abortion situation. I had to sign a waiver saying that I was aware that if my son was born alive for some reason, medical staff on hand would then try to treat him and keep him alive. And I thought that was awesome. I didn't want him dying on a cold metal plate on a table somewhere, in the back areas of a hospital, and I knew that they weren't going to do that for him. They were going to try to keep him comfortable and take good care of him. There was no way that my son was going to be born alive. He wasn't far enough along in the pregnancy to be born alive, or to stay alive at least. And also the type of procedure they were using wasn't going to have him, he wasn't going to be born alive, basically. Which was the plan. It seemed like a more humane death. It is very unlikely that a child will be born alive under the conditions that have been set by this bill in Georgia. I don't object to that rule, though. Let's see what else there are. And I don't believe that was a new rule. I think that was an old part of the bill, but I was looking through like the entire code, and it was just something that stood out to me. It's like, yeah, some people might have a problem with that. I don't. Health records shall be available to the district attorney of the judicial circuit in which the act of abortion occurs, or the woman upon whom an abortion is performed resides. I mean, as creepy as it is to think about the local district attorney poring over my my reproductive records, I'm pretty sure that's happening here right now, and I just don't know about it. Like, they have to document these things. I get it. It was a medical procedure. I get it. It was a medical procedure with a lot of complicated legal stuff going on around it. So, it is kind of weird and creepy, though. Like, oh, look, the district attorney is going to know now that I've had an abortion. Like, oh, well, I mean, I've got this YouTube channel. Everybody knows I've had an abortion now. Let's see. One of the things they did that I really liked, this is called the heartbeat bill. I should probably have said that at the beginning of the video. It's called the heartbeat bill because the idea is that a human being is a human being as soon as you can detect a heartbeat. This happens at about 5.5 to 6 weeks of pregnancy. Most women find out that they're pregnant at around 4 weeks. Pregnancy is calculated in a weird way. So far as I can tell, and please correct me on this if you're a medical professional, pregnancy is calculated from the first day of the last period. So you start your period, you go through your period. Your period lasts, we'll say 5 days. I don't know. It varies from 1 to 1. During that time, you're not pregnant. Then you go, say, another week or so, a little over a week, week and a half. After that, you're not pregnant. You ovulate, you have sex. That egg becomes fertilized. You're still not technically pregnant. Approximately 9 days later, the egg implants. Now you're pregnant. A few weeks have passed, but you're only just now pregnant. However, when they calculate your pregnancy, they go back to the first day of the last period because that's the only reliable date that they actually have. So when you find out you're pregnant, you might not have really been pregnant for more than a few days, maybe a week or two, but you're already pushing up against that 5.5 to 6 week mark. I think it's safe to say that this bill effectively outlaws elective abortion. There are going to be some rare cases where women find out fast enough and run to a clinic that day and schedule an appointment that day, and then go through the 24-hour waiting period that is also part of Georgia's law that day and manage to obtain the abortion in that first, like, what would it be? It would be like a week and a half window. It's a very, very small window. Most women aren't going to be able to operate within that window. And also, abortion clinics tend to be slammed. It's a highly sought after procedure, which I didn't know, but apparently it's a highly sought after medical procedure. So getting that appointment and getting it fast enough in the state of Georgia is going to be a really stressful race. And I don't think many women are going to make it on time. That being said, there are some things about the bill that I do really like. For the homicide of an unborn child, the right to recover for the full value of or the life of such child shall begin at the point at which a detectable human heartbeat, as such, is defined in Code Section 1-2-1 is present. So basically, from the moment that you can detect a heartbeat in an unborn baby, that baby is a human being. Which means that if someone stabs a woman in the gut and she loses that baby, even if she's only 12 weeks into her pregnancy, it is considered a murder. I personally don't know why they didn't write this into the law sooner. This is awesome. I'm glad they did this. For women who want children, and I understand that we're talking about abortion, so there are a lot of women who don't want children, but for a woman who does want a child, protecting your child is very important. It holds incredible, very deep emotional value to protect that child. And there are cases, I was reading about one in New York a while back when the New York law was passed. There was a woman who was stabbed in the gut by her boyfriend multiple times, and her baby died. And that sounded like one of the most horrific things. Like, that's horrible. And he wasn't charged with murder because the baby was unborn and not counted as a human being. And that seemed really horrible. I guess, well, actually, now that I think about it, he might have actually been charged with illegal abortion, which it isn't murder. I honestly think it's good that under this new law, under this new bill, if you kill a pregnant woman's unborn child, that is murder. Good. I think it should be. So, good. They did that. Let's see, they do have a 24-hour wait time and consultation, so you have to be consulted and then you have to wait 24 hours to obtain an abortion, which is going to make things really stressful for women seeking elective abortions because, you got to make sure that that heartbeat doesn't start up in that 24 hours. It seems a little superfluous to do that in these extreme cases in which an abortion would be allowed. I know that we had a 24-hour wait period, and it was so funny because the doctor was reading through the list of things she was legally required to inform us about before giving us our abortion. And it's like, well, this doesn't apply to you, but I have to tell you, blah, 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 blah. Oh, and this doesn't apply to you, but I have to tell you, that your child can be born alive. And it's like, yeah, we all wish that was the case, but, and I understood, she was legally required to because the law is written that way. And other women in Georgia are going to be in situations where they cannot maintain a pregnancy, either for their own health problems or for the health problems of their unborn child. And they're going to be told, oh, well, I mean, your child has a heartbeat, so they're a living person. It's like, yeah, we all get that. We're in this room for other reasons, but okay. That being said, I mean, I kind of laughed at that one. As long as there's never a situation in which a woman is having a life-threatening medical emergency and requires an immediate abortion, and they're like, well, we got to drag our feet and wait for 24 hours because, law. As long as situations like that don't arise, and I don't know how often situations like that might, and I mean, well, we'll see. But I mean, up until that point, until the point that there's a genuine, like, immediate medical emergency, and ectopic pregnancies have already been ruled out, so that's not going to be a problem. The 24-hour wait time, especially in situations in Georgia where abortions are virtually impossible to obtain unless the pregnancy is, non-viable, they're going to be laughable. I suppose it's a good thing that they're there for cases of rape and incest, but even then, they're going to be pretty laughable. All of that aside, I hesitantly, I think I actually like this bill. You can't obtain an elective abortion in Georgia, really. It is almost entirely illegal, and I still think I like this bill. I like that they left in the exemptions that they left in. So far, I mean, somebody who's more familiar with legalese, please point out to me any loopholes that might be in here for these exemptions, any problems that could arise with them. But basically, I think that they were being very fair in the writing of this bill. It's strict. You can't get an abortion if you're suicidal. But it seems fair, which was not something I was necessarily expecting. I was expecting some real Bible thumping, no abortions whatsoever, no exceptions, just deal with it and be tough. And that's not what I found. I found some very reasonable exemptions to this rule, and it does take into account the well-being of unborn children. And that's not just in cases of abortion, that's in cases where women are attacked or harmed. If a pregnant woman is murdered, the person who murdered her is charged with a double homicide. Wonderful, excellent. This is all good. Societies change, cultures change, the world changes. If you're going to make abortion illegal, this is how you do it. And I don't mean, oh my gosh, this is some sort of grand scheme to make abortion illegal throughout the entire country. Although it was kind of interesting, they started out the bill with mentioning that Roe v. Wade and a lot of other, there was another Planned Parenthood case they mentioned, had taken place before medical technology had been able to show us the things about pregnancy that we now know. So for all I know, this is going to eventually try to make its way, they're probably trying to worm their way up to the Supreme Court with this one. And again, I look at it and think, cultures change, societies change, laws change, perceptions change, and knowledge changes. It might not be reasonable for us to expect that for the rest of all time, abortion should be allowed to women. Abortion might just be morally wrong. It might just be that simple. If you're going to make it illegal in a state, they're going about it the right way. They're making it illegal in nearly all cases, but they are leaving exemptions for extreme circumstances that arise that are outside of a person's power, and honestly, in some ways, outside of their responsibility. You should not be expected to take responsibility for a rape. You should not be expected to take responsibility for a bad egg. And that sounds horrible, but if you have a chromosomal abnormality, a fatal one, a trisomy 18, trisomy 13, those are very fatal. Not in all cases. There are still miracle babies, but basically just very fatal. They kill the miracle babies too. They just take longer to do it. You should not be expected to just keep a stiff upper lip and bear it. Your child is dying under those circumstances. If you're dying and you maybe just want to keep living, you shouldn't be expected to just go on with your pregnancy. So if you're going to make a law that says women should not have abortions, if there's going to be a law that prevents women from having abortions, this is a law that I could live under. And that sounds horrible because, I mean, I've been kind of doing a little bit of a series on, stripper stories in my dark and seedy past, which isn't that dark and seedy, but, I mean, where I lived in my little tiny snowy remote town, there really weren't any abortion clinics available. And I went looking when I became, active and started dating for abortion clinics, because I tend to go from the angle of the more I know, the better. And so I try to know everything. You could not obtain an abortion where I lived. And so I just kind of accepted that if I got pregnant, I was going to be pregnant. And I would have perhaps wanted to have access to abortions just for peace of mind, but I ended up never needing one. And even if I had gotten pregnant, especially in some of the relationships that I was in, I think I would have simply accepted my fate. I didn't believe that I would be able to find the kind of relationship that I have now with my husband. I didn't believe that was possible. I just kind of accepted the fact that I was probably going to be unable to form a deep and meaningful pair bond with another human being. And so if I had gotten pregnant, I simply probably would have looked at it and said, well, at least I'll have a family. This might just be the best that I can do for myself. And that was kind of my mentality at that point in time. And so I'm not even sure. I mean, I don't know. I think it depends on the guy. There were a few guys I dated where it was like, yeah, no. And I broke off those relationships very quickly because it was a very solid no on my part. So even in the darkest parts of my life, I'm not sure that I would have objected to living under this law. I should mention, because this is the law now. This is the way it is in Georgia now. This bill will, I'm losing the words. This bill will unfairly affect, I wish I could remember the word. It's gone. Disproportionately. Yes, disproportionately it will affect the very poor and the very young. We saw in Texas when abortions became much more difficult to obtain there, women who could travel simply traveled to other states. So abortions went way down in Texas and they went way up in the neighboring states very quickly. If you can afford to travel and you want an abortion, just travel. If you can't afford to travel, well, then it means you're either very poor or very young. And those are the people who are they're probably the people that most folks who are middle of the road, probably leaning a little more pro-choice, would say, well, I mean, she's 16 and she's poor, let her have the abortion. Or she's 21, but she's been living on the streets, just let her have the abortion. Those are going to be the cases where they can't get the abortion because they can't travel outside of the states. Women who are in their mid-20s and living with their fiance and doing pretty well for themselves, who could probably afford to have the baby, but they just don't want to be inconvenienced. Those are the women who are going to travel outside of the state and get the abortion. So, I mean, that is something to note. And that might in itself be the reason that this law will probably get struck down, this bill. Most likely will get struck down. If it doesn't get struck down, I don't think that's necessarily the most horrible thing in the world. I would not necessarily object to my children growing up in a world where this is the way the law works. I think it will make things a little tricky in cases of Down syndrome. I talked to somebody recently who was talking about Down syndrome. They were talking about the medical problems that occur with Down syndrome that you just don't hear about. And so I want to research that a little better and get a little bit more familiar with. I never really realized how very much like trisomy 18 Down syndrome is, because I grew up around Down syndrome kids and I knew them and they were happy people and they were pretty normal. I mean, they were mentally very, they were moving at a different pace, but they were people. They were happy, normal seeming people. And I guess that's not always the case. And so I want to have a better idea of, I think, what was it? It was approximately like 90% of parents with a Down syndrome baby will abort that baby in areas where they have that option. Maybe there's more to it that I just never took into consideration. And I want to take that into consideration. So eventually I do want to do a video on Down syndrome to kind of just get a clearer idea of how that works, because maybe these people aren't heartless monsters. Maybe they're just looking and saying, well, not only does my baby have Down syndrome, which, as I know, is just mental, I suppose you can say mental retardation in these cases, mental retardation with, you know, maybe some physical changes. But then there's also going to be some other health condition that comes paired with that, and then some other health condition that comes along with that, and some other health condition. And if there's a lengthy list of health conditions, maybe some of these parents are just looking and saying, I could have taken on maybe one or two of these things, but I can't take on all of them. And I don't know. So this law is not going to cover any of that. This law is not going to, well, maybe it would. Maybe it would in cases, because it did mention chromosomal abnormalities in medically futile pregnancy in their definition of medically futile pregnancy. So there might eventually become a point where a parent has a long enough list of issues that come with their Down syndrome case that they might be able to obtain an abortion. I don't know. Interestingly, when I had my abortion, we were told, my husband and I, about a family that had also received a not so great diagnosis. We were not told what it was, that had gone to Georgia, because it's reasonably close to our state, to obtain an abortion. HIPAA being what it is, we weren't told any details. It was just like, oh, there was another couple this year already that had an abortion for medical reasons and they had to travel out of state, which terrified us, because we were like, I mean, I had 3 kids under the age of 3 or under the age of 4. I couldn't afford to travel out of state to get an abortion. So it was a very scary time. And luckily I didn't have to travel out of state to obtain an abortion. But anyway, that aside, I like this bill. I think if you're going to outlaw abortion, this is the way to do it. And I think a lot of people will be angry at me for saying that. If it has to be outlawed, if it absolutely must eventually become an outlawed thing, practice, an outlawed practice, this is how to do it. It covers women in extreme cases, in extreme and terrible situations. Most extreme and terrible situations. It doesn't allow for elective abortions, but it covers the rest of it, and I like that. Anyway, I will probably do eventually more videos on abortion. I'm kind of taking a break from it right now, but I'll probably come back to it and circle around again. If you like this video, please click like. If you want to subscribe, that would make me very happy. It's always nice to know someone's watching out there. If you have any comments or any thoughts, please leave a comment in the comment section. That would be awesome. And I will talk to you guys later.